What is up everyone, I'm CBMF Productions and welcome back to another installment of the Nick Games Retrospective. Today we'll be looking at the tie-in game based on the animated film of the same name that came out before the movie or the series, focusing on the original party animals, apparently, Barnyard. This is the second Nick game by developer Blue Tongue, which I covered the first game that they've developed for Nick in the previous episode Nicktoons Unite, and this time they're focusing on a completely different corner of the Nickelodeon universe, focusing on Otis in the game. This game came out a few days before the release of the film is based off of, which the cast from the movie did reprise the roles to voice the characters, and it came out in August 2006 in the States to the GameCube and PS2, along with a PC version that was slightly different to the game but was still developed by Blue Tongue, and there was also a GBA version developed by Halfbrick, but we're not covering that version for this video, and was later released on the Wii as a launch title in November 2006. It was received decently from critics but nothing spectacular, and now nearly 15 years later, the game has a small following, but nothing on the level of a Battle for Bikini Bottom. But should this game be savored or should it be sent to the slaughterhouse? Well, let's find out and get into the game. The game starts out with the first of 9 chapters of this game, with our main cow Otis trying to launch his friend Peck so he can fly.
Did you ever think of donating your body to, science?
Just be gentle with me, Otis. It's my first time.
Sounds familiar?
This is falling with style.
Then one of Otis' friends, whoever this guy is. Wait, let me look up who this guy is. Oh, it's Freddy the Ferret. Everybody's favorite character, right? Probably next to the Snotty Boy, who totally shows up later in the game. But anyways, Freddy spots the farmer coming home early as Otis slips off the barn, holding onto the rope for his dear life. As the farmer gets out of his truck to let out this new cow, it's just revealed that this cow will be your avatar for the game. You can choose the breed, from brah man to Beastmaster. And you can also select his name. I'm gonna name him Taint, and there's nothing else to choose from.
What the fuck?
After that, the farmer shows you where your food and resting place is as he heads out, and Otis gets saved from his demise by Pig, and his father, the immortal Ben, wants to have a chat with him. Oh, and Peck gets launched as well, where he gets smacked into the window of this old couple that definitely has some domestic problems going on.
Can you keep it quiet back there, woman? I'm watching the TV.
Should we call someone?
I missed the part where that's my problem.
Anyways, after that you get thrown into the help world of this game. The main stable that you reside in is where you can save your game and take a nap to play missions in a nighttime setting, or if you run out of time on a mission when it gets too dark, you can try again the following day. Speaking of, the main crux of this game is that you go around and do various minigames and quests for various side characters from the movie. You first get introduced to Miles, an older mule who tells you about where to save and sleep. Then there's Pig, the chef amongst the party animals, the unstoppable Ben, who's basically your mentor or like an uncle, because they last forever, right? Then there's Pip, the tiny mouse that you have to chauffeur around because of his size. There's Peck the chicken, Freddy the ferret, everybody's favorite character, Root the rooster, who's basically the club owner of the barn at night, which becomes a party house. There's Gopher Joey that you can buy stuff from his shop to decorate the party barn, and you can also get some supplies from him. Hannah the mother hen, who for most missions you have to put her babies back in their coop. There's also these 3 meaner cows, Ig, Bud, and Eddie. Wrong cartoon. That from time to time will challenge you to race them, from either biking in the daytime or driving in the nighttime. Later on, this pregnant cow Daisy and her friend Bessie also will ask you to do a couple missions for them as well. There's also Duke the dog, who usually will either want to play pool, or make you scoop out metal cans with his metal detector you get later on in the game. And of course you can't forget about Otis, who will make you do mostly golf missions, and it never ends. Now getting into the various minigames you have to do over the course of these 9 chapters, because a lot of the minigames repeat themselves. Firstly, you have to do these squirting missions, which makes me sound gross even saying that, where you get this ability where when you want to wear these sunglasses, and after a really goofy cutscene plays, that plays every single time you select these sunglasses, which is part of your arsenal, which we'll get into later. You have the ability to squirt milk out of your udder. That last I checked, only female cows have udders, so regardless of what gender you choose, the anatomy is the same apparently. Anyways, most of the time, you have to squirt these cans like targets, in multiple sessions until you get all of them under a time limit, or you have to squirt these enemies trying to steal your eggs, or you have to compete against other characters to capture and return these chickens to their coops safely. This way you have to squirt these little chicklets in order to stun them, and then throw them tens of yards in the air like they were football, so you might as well be done on arrival. There's also this really weird mission in the game where Freddy has a nightmare or a fever dream of a devil version of himself multiplying, and then trying to steal the chicklets and then eat them. You know, the best part of the movie. There's also another variation of this in the visual patch, one of the areas you unlock later in the game, because you progress through the game through you doing missions and being able to unlock gates in the process, where Miles is there and you have to stop these raccoons from stealing a certain amount of vegetables from the garden and not hitting you with tomatoes that make you lose lives. So you have to squirt them, which you have to refill these milk jugs until the time runs out.
I'm about ready to milk somebody.
Oh, milk me.
Another batch of missions that I referenced earlier are these racing missions with the Three Stooges over here. There are two types of racing missions, biking in the daytime and racing in the nighttime, both of which mostly operate the same. You basically have to go as fast as you possibly can, and you have to go in first place in order to win. The only difference other than the aesthetic of it is that the bike races are usually more casual from the music, and also the fact that you usually get 2 to 3 laps. Unlike the driving sequences, which mostly only go for one long lap, where you have to run from the cops, and if you get caught by the cops, you lose a life in the process. You get to use a bike to travel through various locations throughout the game, and you get notice of these missions by these exclamation marks on the map, and text messages pop up on your flip phone from various characters that ask you for your help on a mission. Another huge batch of missions you have to play in the game are Otis's golf missions. Randomly in the game, Otis will hit you up to play a round of 9 or a full 18 sometimes, where you have a select amount of lives or plays, where you hit a golf ball, and then you control a gopher to keep throwing the ball until it goes into the hole. And this happens several times with slight variations. There's also these missions where you try to make Peck fly by making him flying through various hoops like a Superman 64, and if you make it to the end, you try to launch into one of the holes in the side of this barn, and depending upon where you land, Freddy the Ferret, everybody's favorite character, will make a goofy face as a result. Later in the game, you get this metal detector, in which you usually use it for finding a select amount of metal cans, or trying to fix a leaking pipe. You also get a couple of missions where Pig asks you to get some ingredients so he can make a delicacy for you, and you can find various little recipes scattered in these little notes nailed to trees, or hidden under rocks, throughout the hub world, along with these little hints and tips to help you out. You also have to help Freddy the Ferret, everybody's favorite character, to also get him food so he can sell his hunger, because for some reason he can't get it himself. An example of getting an ingredient mission is where you have to gather honey from the territory of the bees, and you have to scoop out honey out of these multiple hives, and try not to get stung by these hordes of bees in the process. There's another batch of missions where you stand behind these people like a mailman or the old couple, and do dance moves behind them, and see how many you can do until they turn around, which did get a chuckle out of me. And there's also simpler missions such as having to gather a certain amount of items for a certain character. You also sometimes get one-off missions like randomly trying to outdo Otis's squirt record by squirting on top of the barnyard.
I got
There's
him.
no way that hit.
Playing Pool with Duke, playing this minigame where it's like a knockoff Wipeout game, where you're trying not to fall into the mud and kick this pipe to other players, trying to jump over it. There's a mission where Otis has a crush on Daisy, and you have to send flowers over to her. There's a mission where you have to send Pip and Otis's other friends, like Freddy the Ferret, everybody's favorite character, to Otis's aid. There's a couple of missions in the Barnyard Club where you're serving milkshakes to people like it's burger time. There's a mission where you get this Gatling gun, and try to murder kids who try to tip over these cows at night. Why are they partying in the barn like the other cows? Are they just regular cows? Do they have the same intellect as Otis or Ben or the other cows? Is there like a chain of command of cows like it's like Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead? And I can't compare it to a Zack Snyder movie because fuck, does it get dark. Now getting into the actual main storyline, because most of the meat and potatoes of this game is out of the way, the first chapter has you being introduced to this game's world and all of its rules and characters. The second chapter starts with this cutscene, which all the cutscenes are voiced over by Bill the Bull, who's a bodyguard for the Barnyard Club at night, I might add, stating how the raccoons have been stealing more and more than ever before, and that the Unbreakable Ben will be keeping an eye on it. And then the coyotes at the beginning of chapter 3 get introduced as a main threat, but fear no more because Unkillable Ben will help him out. But as he's babbling about coyotes, his son Otis gains attraction for the new cow in town, Daisy, and starts to fixate on her. You also get a couple side quests amongst the main story going on, spearheaded by Daisy. First asking him to get these ingredients to make a cake for the farmer's birthday, and also hosting a party for the oldest dog in the barnyard, Everett, who looks like death is just staring him right in the face. As we have to do 5 minigames to raise money for his birthday cruise, which are just minigames that we played before, just shuffled around slightly. After that, we get a cutscene for chapter 4, stating that the barnyard animals didn't take coyote season seriously, and after playing one minigame, we jump immediately into chapter 5, where we see Ben defending the chickens against the coyotes, and he dies in the process, and we see it. And if that wasn't twisting a knife already, the next day you have a mission where you have to gather a batch of bluebell flowers to place on Ben's grave, as Otis is just sitting there sobbing. I can't think of a sadder moment in any Nickelodeon game that I've played thus far. This shook me as a 19-year-old. I can't imagine playing this game as a kid. But then you have a mission where you have to gather 6 of the lowest quality models of the entire game, and these little chiclets, to sing a song for Otis to cheer him up, that we never get to hear. After that, we go into chapter 6 with Otis being elected the new leader of the barnyard, as he starts out by getting caught by the farmer.
Farmer saw the whole thing. Miles had to kick him to make him forget.
Apparently concussions just don't exist in this universe. Then once we get to chapter 7, we get to play one of the most iconic scenes in the film where you, Otis, and the Three Stooges hop in a car and stalk some kids who get revenge on them for cow-tipping their allies. And it looks straight out of horror from the way it's animated, as we have to follow these kids behind slowly, like that scene at Home Alone where Harry and Marv sneak behind Kevin McAllister, except it's controlled a lot more poorly, as Otis and friends sneak into the house where the kids resign and scare them like the movie, despite we never get to see the main bully that this movie's known for, outside of Biggie Cheese, who like him, doesn't appear in the game. You know when I said wait for the bully to show up? I lied.
Now you can never trust me again.
After that, you get chased by the cops again and do the same old stuff. Then in chapter 8, Otis decides he's not a good leader anymore and runs away from the barnyard, leaving you as the new leader of the barnyard. I'm sorry, but where are the dozens and dozens of animals that was with Otis earlier when he got elected? Where are all of them now? Then we get to the final chapter, where Otis returns after the main coyote kidnaps Hannah, the main mother hen, to take a stand along with you as you get the Gatling gun to shoot down the coyotes from getting to the chicklets in this junkyard, similar to the finale, but there's no Won't Back Down playing in the background. What do you think this is, a SpongeBob movie game? It's just yet another mission where you have to shoot the main coyote before he throws crates at you, as Otis is just on the side scoring when he can. Yeah, Otis, just keep going at it. Doing a good job, Otis, doing a good job. It's like I'm talking to a 5-year-old, but I mean, it's Kevin James. Once you hit the main coyote enough times, you literally get a "You win" title card pop up.
You Oh my god! Any key. Which one should I press? F1? Should I press F1?
As we get one final cutscene showing Otis walking the coyote with a golf club, despite you did most of the heavy lifting, as he once again is the leader of the barnyard, and now with Dad as Daisy gives birth to a child off screen, as you are now part of Otis's cool list and part of the barnyard as credits roll. This game is without a doubt one of the most lengthiest games I've played in the retrospective thus far. Most of the time these licensed games, especially tie-in movie games, which just came out back when basically every major Hollywood movie guy's own tie-in game, especially kids games. This is one of the rare ones that actually has more to offer than just a linear story that takes you like 2 to 3 hours to beat. This game takes quite a while to finish, and it took me around 10 hours to beat the story mode, which for a kid, you get way more out of the $50 to $60 price tag than most Nickelodeon games around this time period. The fact that this game is a hub world that you get to unlock and explore as you complete objectives is really cool, and the fact that there is so much stuff to explore that isn't required to beat the story mode, from the little hints you can find, the recipes you can make, getting to play minigames and missions to rank higher on the leaderboard, getting to save up tokens to deck out the night barn, and you even get a cut if you're 100% the night barn, the locations you visit like Dankweed Pond. Okay, I'll stop now. But my main point is that the game rewards you for actually exploring the game and getting to take its time to get used to the controls and play all the mini games, and taking the atmosphere the game creates. Speaking of, the soundtrack to this game is quite memorable, and better than most licensed games I've heard in quite a minute. It's not amazing, but it definitely sticks out, and I wouldn't mind listening to it outside of playing the game because it's quite catchy. From the theme that plays as you bike through the plains of this open world, the moody track that plays as you bike at night, the jazz band track that plays while you're playing games in the barn, the track that plays when you're golfing. Not all the tracks are bangers, but the majority is quite solid. Not to mention graphics wise, it's pretty average for the time, and although it definitely shows its age at times, mostly holds up today. The controls for the most part are solid for a game of this style. It has a good balance of difficulty to where there are some missions of the game that will definitely test your patience, but it's not so common to where it will make you want to quit the game. It has an ebb and flow of having fun and testing for the kids to get a good amount of practice so they can progress further in the game. And the writing, while not being great by any means, does keep it consistent with the movie and the series. The voice acting for the little of it that is in this game is well done from the reprising actors from the movie, which is pretty much the entire cast. And the game feels a lot more free and lived in. There's not a whole lot of restraint that you feel like while playing this game. There's no game overs that will make you restart, there's no like limited lives. The hub world's quite big for a licensed game. There aren't that many loading screens, and you can tell there's effort put behind this game. And I will say, it's one of those rare movie tie-in games that actually does match up the quality of the movie it's based off of. I personally never really grew up with the movie. I did watch it a couple years back and I thought it was solid but not great, and the same goes for the show. So once again, it keeps the consistency of being like the movie and the series. Despite the fact that this game gets a lot of things right, at the same token, it gets quite a lot of things wrong that I do have to criticize. Firstly, despite being a lot longer than your average Nick game, it's really padded. The game repeats a lot of the same minigames over and over again, primarily the escorting minigames, the golf minigames, the chicklet and egg minigames where you gotta throw them back into their coop, the peck minigames, and the worst of all of them, the racing minigames. The rest of the minigames above that I just mentioned, I can tolerate, although they get played way too much, I can actually stand them. But whenever I had to play another race with Ed, Ed, and Eddie, I audibly groaned. This is primarily due to the controls. When you're casually biking around, the controlling is serviceable, but when you're trying to race, these controls don't fit for these sequences, and because there's no momentum or flow to how you bike, it's basically just having to press the X button repeatedly until you finish. If you're playing this on the PS2 with your handy dandy SpongeBob controller, like me, but they don't hold a candle to the driving sections of this game. These sections are bar none the worst minigames to play out of this entire game in my opinion. This is for several reasons. How you drive a car in this game feels so off, because like the bike, bars! There's no momentum to how you start and slow down. I get this isn't physics class, but when the car goes from 0 to 140 in less than 10 seconds, like Brian gave this car to Dom at the end of the first Fast and Furious film, back when those films were good, that's an issue in my opinion. Not to mention that, like the bike, there's no reverse or backing up button. Back it up! Back it up! Most racing games or games that have cars in them usually have a reverse button because last I checked, cars had them. And when you get hit into a tree or sign while speeding down these vacant streets at night, instead of being able to reverse, you have to keep running into whatever you're in until you slot off one sign to keep going. Plus, what makes these sequences straight up annoying on top of the controls that feel like you have butterfingers is the music. This track is by far the worst of the entire game. This track consists of just random band instruments just playing random notes. To not even make music, it's just chaos. And as someone who played the trumpet for all 3 years of middle school, I know when I hear bad brass instruments. And because these sections last for at least 3 minutes or more, this is what you have to hear the entire time. Annoyed yet? It sounds like a reject from the Rabbits Go Home soundtrack. And imagine having to play this section a dozen times throughout the game, because you actually have to. Another issue that disrupted my playthrough a couple times is the lack of autosaving. With the exception of one time right before the final boss of the game, the rest of the game doesn't ask you to autosave one bit and it's on you to save your progress. I'm not mad at the concept of putting more responsibility on the player to check on the work, but I had multiple times when my copy froze when I tried to buy from Joey the Gopher to deck out my Barnyard, and hours of the progress was lost because there was no autosaving feature. I had been using so many other Nick games having this autosaving feature built in that I had no idea that this wasn't an option in this game. And there's no sign to change it, and that's inexcusable. This game came out on multiple 6th gen and 7th gen consoles. By 2006, we had memory cards. Or the console just saved its data for us. This is not an NES game. The fact they didn't include a simple feature made no sense to me, and a couple of times I had to replay hours of the missions. After a couple times where I crashed, I saved every single half hour, being afraid they would crash again, which you shouldn't be feeling while playing a kid's game. I had more crashing bugs than when I played Revenge of the Flying Dutchman on my PS2, which that version is known for having a bug that will crash your save data and everything on it when it feels like it. I luckily had no issues with my copy of the game, so maybe this is just karma just biting me back in the ass. The only other game that I played in this retrospective thus far that had no auto-saving feature was the Jimmy Neutron movie game, which was generations behind on so many other aspects that the fact that it had no auto-saving did surprise me. But for this game, it's just disappointing. Another weird thing that I noticed in the game is that all the voice acting for all the dialogue scenes is very few and far between. What I mean by that is that any dialogue scene that you get with any character in the game, they'll have a voice for the first and last line, but the remainder of the dialogue in the middle is just silence. I had the exact same issue with Nicktoons Unite. I don't know what Blue Tongue is doing, maybe the actors were charging by the word, but it's definitely something of note. And the last main issue I have with the game is the placement of all the chapters, and the cutscenes just feel very off. You'll have some chapters that will take quite a while, like 2 to 3 hours before you'll get a cutscene that you'll know that you've progressed in the game to the next chapter. But then you'll get, for example, chapter 4, which is just titled Everett's Party. Despite in the game, we just finished raising money for this geezer, and then we play one random mission. And then we head into chapter 5 where Ben does a very gruesome on-screen death. Why was this rated E for everyone? I have no idea.
Rated everyone 10 and up.
I just wish the chapters were placed better, so there was a more consistent point of progression, because there are sections of this game where you just feel like you're in an endless loop, doing the exact same missions over and over again. And the overall storyline and the cutscenes of the game feel so in the background, and I like that the developers just realized they had to have a wraparound story at the last minutes. All of the cutscenes don't even last 30 seconds, and there are parts like the bullies being pranked by Otis and friends that don't fit within the game's story, and I feel like they had to be in there because the movie was doing it at the same time, despite you don't even have the main bully. And the main thread of the coyotes feels so forced, because there's no looming thread of them throughout the game. Because the game is so focused on minigames and missions, they're so in the background until the final boss level, which is so underwhelming that it's barely even worth mentioning. It's still an enjoyable game, but far from perfect. Overall, Barnyard is a surprising game in both good and bad ways. The good side is that it's nice to see a game that has a full open world, that you get to explore and work to unlock more of it, the controls are mostly competent, the fact that you get to be the main character is neat, the voice acting when it's there is solid, it keeps the atmosphere and tone of the movie nicely, there's quite a lot to do within the game, and it isn't just a bare bones platformer that we've seen tons of before, it has a good amount of challenge to it, and it's fun for all ages alike, the soundtrack has many catchy tunes, and it's a well made game, but the story is very weak, some of the missions get replayed way too much and some not enough, the voice acting is not really present that much like Nicktoons Unite, the pacing is very uneven, the lack of auto-saving can screw you over if you're not precise about it, and it's not the most replayable game in the world, but it's a solid game overall. And as someone who's never been super nostalgic for the Barnyard property from either the movie or the series outside of the memes, this is on the same level of the movie and the show in my opinion, and not a bad pick for a Nickelodeon game in my opinion. I give Barnyard a B, a 7.5 out of 10, and a rented recommendation. So that's Barnyard, what do you guys think about it? Leave your thoughts down in the comments, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more contents. I'm CBMF Productions, and I'll see you on the next level.
Games.